Why must I go through life always having to validate my existence, eradicate their persistence, while having the unmitigated gall to question the resistance that I feel daily? No matter how much work I put in, the sum of my effort remains -10, and the pain grows deeper within. I'll let go of this angst that gnaws at my soul, only when the struggle remains front and center, no time to take a seat on the bench and catch a splinter. I'm on my A game 7 days a week, never once contemplating the word retreat. This is about a falsehood I'm forced to live, with profound effects on me that are exploitive. How can I honestly reckon with this fraud, when deep down inside I've always known my image was bought by those who profess to educate me, that in the same breath preach personal responsibility while flagrantly stagnating me? I'm so done having to explain the inner workings of my brain. The last thing I am is insane, just one man fighting through all this pain in order to take back his reign as king.
One of the nicknames that Damon goes by is Nomad. That is Damon spelled backwards. And when I looked up what Nomad meant, it was a wanderer, constantly on the move for information, to learn something, constantly on the move to help someone, constantly seeking to know what is right.
His word is his word. He pride his pedigree, his character on his word. He would give from his own to ensure somebody else can sit at the table and eat with him.
He's also very honest and candid about the mistakes that he's made in his life.
He's very vocal, very eloquent. He has the ability to articulate himself very well. Sometimes detrimental to him because he'll look out for people. And so that gets him in a lot of trouble.
But the conversation I remember having was, you better win that case, buddy. Because if you lose that case, you've challenged the status quo. And unfortunately, he did lose. He had some of the top lawyers in the United States. And he did lose that case. And it's been a decade plus since then.
I came home bloody, beaten, and deranged. My grandmother saw me trying to hide, addressing my sobbing by telling me, "Go back outside, face your fears, look those boys square in the eye, find their soul, and make that your battle cry."
Tell us why you're here in San Quentin and where you're from.
I'm in prison for attempted murder.
Being in prison 25 years so far, Damon has spent a lot of time thinking about his emotions.
I had to go back to when I was a child, right?
Okay.
Because there's the conditioning lied when I was a kid. And if I experienced some trauma early on, then I didn't know how to process that trauma. So later on, it comes out in different forms. So if I'm having a confrontation, rather than we can amicably disagree, that doesn't happen where I came from. And so what I saw in my community was violence was a way to solve the problem. A lot of times I would react to situations as opposed to respond. But if you understand my conditioning growing up in Compton, it's not about response in the inner city. It's about reaction, right? And so I didn't understand that dynamic back then. I was a young kid. And so anytime that I felt threatened in any way, I would react. And the reaction ended me up in prison.
That concept of where I'm from, you have to react. It's not about responding. Is that because if you don't react, you might not get a chance to respond?
Exactly, you're dead.
when you grow up in an environment where you could get shot every day and your life is basically forfeit in the street, you will ascribe respect and things like that an enormous amount of importance because your life depends on it. In the particular situation that you're in, that is a totally reasonable thing to do. So you would think, oh my gosh, why are people shooting each other over these minor things? It's not a minor thing when you live in an environment where everything could escalate every day.
These are blows that I, Damon, and, countless others that are sitting in prison have endured growing up. Trauma was part of our lives. And so to survive in an environment where you don't get to deal with your trauma like through a psychologist or a psychiatrist, you deal with it through self-medication, and you deal with it by making sure that your name and reputation stays stellar.
It caused me to pick up a weapon, pick up a gun, and shoot Mr. Ryan.
I got arrested was the worst night of my life. I had lost all sense of self, lost who I was as a human being, and did something very, very foolish. And I've had to live with that for 30 years. So it's just been a journey just to try to regain who I am. That in itself takes a lot of work. How do I not fall back in the traps that led me up to the selfish behavior which caused me to shoot Mr. Ryan?
I met Damon in 2012 at San Quentin State Prison.
I met Damon in 2010 while incarcerated.
I met Damon when I am a volunteer at San Quentin.
I just really had a sense that he had something very special among all the men in that program.
He was what we call a programmer. He was always in a mentor program, mentoring youth, the SAP program I recall, which is drug and alcohol. So he was this positive guy, but we didn't run in the same circles.
The inmates, they respect him. Not the kind of respect that would be like a bully or somebody that's a brute or street or hood. No, we're talking about respect as far as a man with great common sense.
This is a very astute man. He watches behavior. He watches what everyone is doing. It became really clear how very smart and very well-spoken. With that, well-spoken and very intelligent came this other aspect of compassionate.
But Damon had a way of reaching people in that group because he was respected, and you have to have a certain level of respect to go in a group that's Criminals and Gangsters Anonymous. I mean, guess who's in the group? These are the criminals and the gangsters amongst the incarcerated population who just haven't let go yet and needed somebody who can walk them through the process of stepping away from criminal thinking, stepping away from a criminal mentality. And he was one of the facilitators in the group that would help people out with that. And I've seen him talking to people. This guy literally walked laps with people to discuss this type of things, I mean, I've seen that happen hundreds of times over the past few years.
So we don't become a statistic when we get out.
And when you're influential within the prison system, you have the ability to stop a riot. You have the ability to pull masses into programs that will benefit them.
Many people who have been in prison for a long time, and this includes people who are a little bit older, actually gain very valuable interpersonal skills in dispute resolution. These folks that are in their 50s and above tend to be the calmer inmates. Of course, they would have aged out of violence a long time before, and they often serve as mentors and a stabilizing force on the yard.
The Uncuffed Project serves those coming out of incarceration, those who've earned their freedom.
Today after how many years?
40 years. 40 years.
How's it feel to be free, Russell?
Oh my God.
So I've done the legwork on the outside. He has coached me and done legwork on the inside. We kind of have three-prong. We have transitional housing, which has programs in that for growth and healing and help. And then we have a podcast that we're working on to educate and get their voices heard. Their voices have been stifled for a long time. And I think that the ability to change that system comes with drawing light to it. We have the backpacks that get them through the first 60, 90 days. That is just essential. It's just really critical for their well-being, for their emotional being, not just, the nutrients that are here, but that there's not a scarcity and a feeling of scarcity.
And we have more than 7 million people under some form of correctional supervision, which is to say under probation or under parole. And the tentacles of the system go far beyond just the official institutions that people are in. They go into all the restrictions that they suffer after they get out. They go into all the supervisory limitations that they experience.
So I seen Tracy, they have a rec room. He was in the rec room, he was sitting there and he was looking out the window. And, as a sign of respect, he didn't, hey, what's up, OG, how you feeling, right? Because I hadn't seen him there before. And he was like, oh, man, I'm not doing too good, man. I got out, right? So I just had to ask, hey, Lise, I don't know what the situation is, but this guy could really use what you gave me.
So nice to meet you. Take a look in there, make sure I got the right sizes.
And that's another way of paying it forward. So it's a beautiful thing to see.
Now, when I see him around the building, he's not moping, sitting by the window anymore. He's willing through the hallways. I can tell that it really did something for him. It's the same thing like it did for me. Right? It's like, man, things are possible. People do know there is help. Right? So I don't expect everybody to do everything for me, but I know there are avenues that I can take that can possibly put me in a better position to really be successful out here. And I think he feels the same way too. And he's gonna be all right. He's gonna push through it. And I feel that way about myself.
So let's cut right to the chase.
Cut right to the chase. Come on, we want to know.
I received a 3-year denial today. The main factors of my 3-year denial was confidential information from San Quentin. Just people dropping notes. Those notes, they said, are deemed credible at this time. So they used that to base their decision to find me unsuitable.
Are you angry right now?
Actually, I'm not angry, man.
Indifferent? What do you feel?
Disappointment. I feel for my family, not for me. It's really not about me. It's about the work that I put in to get a parole date. 10 years, nothing. And then some guy drops a note saying that I'm going to kill the population. Just to listen to that. I'm going to kill the population? How does that happen?
What are you going to tell your family about this?
I got to call my mom. But ironically, I got to say grandmother. I don't know if she's going to make it to my next hearing. I don't know. It's a serious situation. I just lost one of my grandmothers not even 2 months ago. I lost my grandfather. I lost my father. Everybody's gone except for my mother and my grandmother. Part of me wants not to tell them, but I gotta tell them. But right now, I'm avoiding it. I believe this is a part of my journey.
But the feelings, man, are there. They're real. It's hard to accept the fact that I've done what I was supposed to do and didn't get granted parole.
The center of the hearing revolves around a concept called insight. What is insight? It's this nebulous concept. Nobody knows what it is. And it's essentially kind of a combination of remorse for what you've done and some kind of understanding of where you were and what happened to you when you committed the crime. You're expected to kind of sell this coherent narrative story, right? So people have to take the chaos of their lives and put it into this sort of Hallmark movie. And yet, it can't be too polished because it then comes off as not being sincere enough. The other thing that goes in the C file is something called chronos, which is laudatory comments about how you are doing in rehabilitative programs. Disciplinary write-ups, which are known colloquially as the 115s or the 128s. And those can be very small things, like, I don't know, having a quarter in your pocket. I've seen examples like that. Or, oftentimes something is getting written up wrong. Like, I have a case in my book in which a person repeatedly every year gets dinged for an incident involving him wielding a baseball bat. And he has to explain every year that it was not him holding the baseball bat, it was the Aryan Brotherhood holding the baseball bat, beating him up, like he was actually the victim. It just got written the other way around. Other things that go in the C file involve, for example, reports from informants in the prison. They will include reports that are, confidential and will not be revealed to the defense attorney because of their sensitive nature. Now, consider the fact that there's two sides to this. This is tentative, right? Because on one hand, if the reports are true, you do want to protect the person who made the report from retaliation. On the other hand, there is no way to tell whether the reports are true when even the official write-ups are so frequently untrue and they do not go challenged year after year after year after year.
He had a cell fire. He was at church. They had to go get him from church to bring him back to the cell to find all of his personal property burned. They gave the write-up to Damon, not to the cellie. The cellie said, I did, it was my thing. And they've been talking about that now for 3 hearings later.
Now, being a parole commissioner is not an easy job. The prisons are very far away from each other. It's difficult to travel. They're on the road 5 days a week, traveling from prison to do these hearings, which are grueling and take several hours a day, right? So you can think about a particular type of person who's in this system coming from a particular perspective who wants that kind of job.
Let's not forget who parole board members are. They're not former public defenders or champions of justice. They're former wardens. They're chiefs of police. They come from the system. So the deck is stacked against you already.
A prosecutor's best interest has never been about bringing forth new evidence. They have a reputation of freezing people in time.
So we have this perfect storm on this board of people whose ability to do this is actually reduced, who don't have a great ability to tell who really is remorseful, who really has insight, whatever, but are very certain that they can.
Damon Cooke successfully challenged in the United States Ninth Circuit his denial. They found there was not some evidence. The case was then before the U.S. Supreme Court. Unfortunately, after he lost, when you become infamous, so At the time I met him, he was the hero of a lot of inmates because he's challenging them. How dare they not allow us to be paroled? And then, of course, he became the ire of the system that he dared to challenge. The Ninth Circuit itself, the second highest court in our land, said Damon Cooke should go home. But the system won. The system immediately ran to the Supreme Court and cried foul, and they won.
This is the system that we entrust to rehabilitate people. The whole process from police force all the way through the judge, through the judicial system, all the way through the correctional system, right? The Carcebedo Project. This shit is rigged from beginning to end. You know, there's no way in the world he should be in there 20 years after doing a 7 to life with 4 years enhancement.
They've ignored recommendations from staff members. They've ignored his programming that he's done. They've ignored inmates' own admissions that he was not involved in certain instances that he was accused of. They've ignored documented evidence from correctional officers that conducted investigations.
But if you're someone who stands up, like myself, like Damon says, I did this, and I earned what the jury gave me, then I'd like, and I think society'd like, the other end of the bargain to be held. I upheld my bargain. Here's the rules and regulations on what a prisoner must do to be found suitable. If I've done them all, and I'm now 3 times what the jury says I should serve, in Damon's case, 4 times would be 28 years, quadruple what seems to be the problem. Might be a broken system.
When the victim goes to see you, and the victim has forgiven you, the victim doesn't have to be your best friend. You don't have to be as close as you once were. But I think it speaks volumes when you can sit face to face with a victim.
And I don't like to refer to him as a victim. Let's just call him by his name, because I don't want to minimize who he was or what I did with him and to him. So Patrick Ryan came to visit me, and that was by far the best day of my entire 30 years in prison, the best day of my life, because not very many people have the opportunity to make amends, direct amends to the person that they've harmed, and look the man across that I shot, look him in the eye and say, I'm sorry, and really have him receive it in a way that was meaningful to both he and I. This was very life-changing for me, because I was able to let go some of that hurt, some of that shame that I felt, the guilt I experienced over the years, right? By looking at him, hugging him, embracing him, crying with him. I know he felt my sincere remorse in that situation, and no district attorney, no other person objectively looking at this case can ever take that away from us, because we were able to reconcile on a level that no one else can say. And that's more important to me than any release day from prison, anything else I could possibly do in here, knowing that that man is on the path of healing with someone who has perpetuated the pain in him. Not so much about me and my freedom or whether I get out or not, but the fact that that we were allowing each other a space to heal.
If there was something that I would want people to know, I would want them to know, first of all, about Damon and the injustices there. That goes without saying. But more than anything else, in addition to that, I would want them to know of the tremendous humanity that is inside prison. That there are such great potential for men and women who have made a mistake, but have really worked hard to be able to overcome that mistake, and yet are overlooked because of the practices of the parole board that stops the ability for them to make a difference in society and their family and the communities. And Damon is like the poster child of that.
I think that all I would want those on the outside to understand is that when a person has been incarcerated and they've made the decision to change, you have to give them an opportunity. Because again, most of us have been given 3, 4, 5 chances. We know that Damon's been in there a lot longer than he should be. We know that he should be out.
He wants to make a difference. He can make a difference. He doesn't stop. He has a purpose, and he's driven to achieve.
I will definitely say Damon Cooke does not pose an unreasonable. I would go as far to say he poses no risk whatsoever. The guy's too damn positive. He's got a future that's so bright, it's unbelievable. He was too busy for he and I to become close. So I think I can objectively state that this is the kind of guy that's supposed to come home. He's done everything that's asked of him.
This perception of prison as being kind of like a world of its own is not true. Most of the people that are doing time will eventually get out. And the question is, when they get out, are they going to be people who can assume a role of healing and mentoring and learning and improving and making their lives meaningful? Or are they going to be stuck in a rut because of where they've been and try to deal with all the toxic messaging and neglect that they've experienced and not be able to claw their way up? Talk about the need to provide people more opportunities and to heal neighborhoods as an alternative to the kind of, backward-looking, locking people up that's unfortunately not going to bring back their loved ones.
So if you can't get him out, what does that say about us as a society? Where's our focus at? What are we calling ourselves? The greatest country on the planet? And you got this guy locked up? Those aren't the people you're supposed to be keeping in prison. Those are the people you're supposed to unleash, right? And send back into the community so they can help heal some of these traumas and help close some of these rifts that we have in our neighborhoods now.
Nobody knows what tomorrow brings. And each day he's in there, it's taken away from true possibility of helping people out here. He will make a change. He is passionate, and it's not a game. It's not an intention seeker. It's not to supersize his ego. It's his heart. Them years he did has changed that man. They should let him go.
Everybody deserves a second chance, and the last mile is giving me a second chance. So the naysayers, I look forward to them. I'll prove them wrong.